It's going well. How about you? So we're just gonna do a quick Q&A slash market review since it's been a very slow week. So I just wanted to get a stream out the way. In case there was any questions from earlier this week. Tomorrow there will be most likely a live stream. Same thing with Friday. I'm still trying to decide whether or not, based on the current price action, obviously with the election and FOMC we have tomorrow, the whole week is just going to be kind of scuffed. So I have no expectations or taking anything massive. Just trying to get tiny wins and call it a week. Today I wanted to cover shortly just basically how to identify low probability conditions going into the 9:30 and knowing when to avoid those kind of conditions so you could just completely avoid them and go on about your day and not worry about it. And then obviously if you have any questions you can post those into the chat as well and we'll look at that. But going to the morning, obviously we had elections last night. Those reports came out. I think it was finalized by maybe 3 a.m. or something like that. But we had this huge run up during Asian, right? Like if I turn on Asian session, we go to the 15-minute chart here. We're basically running for that previous week high all the way up here, and there was no stopping it. We displaced, a good 600, 700 points, which is on par with what last election was. Last election, I think, was about 600 points on the day, and we basically got that same exact price movement so far, straight up. We did tag some of these daily levels, previous week high. Obviously, I'm gonna mark out as well. But going into the New York session, how we can obviously identify that previous week high as a potential draw on liquidity, just proximity based, right? Yeah, we're disrespecting the bearish PD raise. We're trading up for a large time-based liquidity pool, previous week high, and we're already opening up, around 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in close proximity to it. So you have to understand that liquidity and inefficiencies normally are used as magnets. So as we get closer to them, price is more likely to speed up or draw towards that magnet. So then there's less time for orders to be pulled and there's more liquidity available on those kind of specific levels. So we had SMT on the lows going into Monday. Now, I don't want to say that the election, the results of the election on the market is algorithmic. It's hard to argue that, but there still are algorithmic signatures going into a large news driver like this, right? We have SMT at the bottom at the weekly low, and we're expanding into a previous week high, and we're likely to see expansion potentially into Wednesday and Thursday, depending on how the interest rate comes out on Thursday. We don't really know, but it's normally not wise to gamble on things like this. It's just there's really no point. We have better opportunities later on this week and later on next week and the rest of the year, and obviously all of next year, where it's just not wise to risk your capital on days that are subpar, right? The first goal is to preserve capital, then it's to grow it. So when you understand that there's certain days you just don't want to trade, or you have to operate on a mentality of abundance instead of scarcity. When you flip that mindset, a lot of times, a lot of psychological problems can be fixed as well. So when you operate on this plane of abundance, knowing that there's always going to be a new setup, knowing that there's always going to be some sort of new trade idea or a way to mitigate the drawdown or get out of a losing streak, then you don't feel like you have to rush your trading, right? You don't feel like as soon as you get into drawdown, you have to fix it, or as soon as you get 2 losses in a row, you have to up your contract size, or you have to take subpar setups like on days like today. So in the private group this morning, I woke up, I looked at it for a good 15, 20 minutes, tried to find a bias, and there was nothing clean. So I just told everyone, don't worry about it today because we have plenty of other opportunities. And Monday obviously was pretty good for a Monday with no news. So after that, the rest of it is just, it doesn't matter too much. But going into, I want to mention how to look at these low probability sessions. So going into the higher time frame, if you had a bullish bias, reaching for that previous week high, then we drop down. We're looking for that open low high close on the daily candle, right? Now, typically when Asian has a large expansion like this, we're going to have difficult price action. But even just looking at midnight here, we're looking at the midnight open, we do have a drop down. We fill this inefficiency, rebalance it a little bit, and then we start to leave it. But notice within London and then after it, everything on the time wise is kind of messed up. Um, there's nothing really in here that's a classic day. This drop down here was at 6:45. London didn't really do anything much. Um, all the timings in here is really whack to me. I mean, I guess you could argue this is somewhat of a classic expansion, but it's a really difficult one because look at the low of this 6:45 is in between two kill zones. Um, we basically run this right at 9:30 and we get enter into a consolidation period the rest of the day. If you can look at the lower time frames in here, I don't think this is high probability. You could argue going into 9:30, that's probably the best opportunity there was. Basically, just taking the this short-term fair value gap, going into 9:30 and then just taking that to scalp up into London high and then the previous week high. I still think that's hindsight, to be honest, because I would not have trusted that 9:30 was going to expand in this case. I would have liked that 9:30 was going to manipulate, form some sort of SMT at the lows, which we had very slight SMT going into 9:30, but it wasn't substantial enough where I was, looking to that as a good long opportunity. But very small breaker here, change in state delivery with a fair value gap. That's a short-term unicorn. But I still think this is a kind of a hindsight idea here, and then using that to expand up. And you can see in here, once that drawn liquidity is hit, we're, for the most part, the rest of the New York session, we're consolidating. You may not see this as consolidation, but on a higher time frame, you zoom back out, we're basically consolidating within this range. And you could zoom out even more on the 1 hour, and we're just kind of wicking in there, right? So trying to trade directionally and holding onto larger moves is going to be difficult. Obviously, even in here, we saw previous week high with SMT, and then we drop down. This short idea doesn't work into the IRL. Everything kind of just chops up. And these days are programmed to do that typically. Low probability days are going to be swing to Z days, or they're going to consolidate and basically just burn equity. They're there to create liquidity on either sides and then run both sides, or create liquidity for a large news driver going to the next day, which we have. So with elections today, with 8:30 news and FOMC tomorrow, be comfortable doing nothing. And in the beginning, that's going to be uncomfortable because you want to be able to basically just look at the charts every day, or be able to execute or get that kind of feeling of just pushing the button. It comes down to basically just the coping mechanism of how you deal with that feeling, because the feeling is universal, right? Like I'll have the same kind of bodily response of wanting to trade than someone else, but the difference between two people may be how do you react to that response. So that's kind of where it gets difficult, because you have to realize, okay, there's different things that will indicate to you that you are likely to overtrade or over leverage or trade on a bad day. And I'll probably have a whole different video on psychology, because someone asked for it earlier. But I mean, yeah, just looking at the 15-minute chart alone, going back to what I was saying, this looks like no kind of profile. And with the large Asian expansion, typically you expect low probability New York session. So large overnight expansion, expect New York to consolidate, and most times chop around and not be super clean. Yesterday, I mean, it was decent, but obviously before elections either, you don't want to be trading. I do live trade about 2 to 3 times per week, Dune in the private group. So either tomorrow or Friday or both. We'll have to see. We'll be live streaming in the morning. Gonna have a clear view of today's price action until 9:30 expansion. Thought the 645 wick will get manipulated before going. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking too. I was thinking if we wanted to be bullish, we needed to see that wick taken out, and then basically a really, really delayed New York reversal profile, with 9:30 being low of the current day. But even over here, we're not even dropping below the midnight opening price. So yeah. So this is the kind of days you want to avoid. And if you can understand and identify the days you want to avoid, it's half the battle, because everyone can trade. If you have a good understanding, everyone can trade on those high probability days. Everyone can trade and execute and win on the days that are textbook. And those are the A+ setups you want to be taking. The hardest part normally is knowing when not to. So my suggestion would be study the days, that you either took a loss on technically, so there was some sort of technical analysis that led to the loss, or there's a day where you're like, I don't like these kind of days. I want to learn what are the signals beforehand on the higher time frame that indicate that it's likely to be difficult. And normally you can determine that by both using the economic calendar and by looking at the price action on the higher time frame, right? Because looking at things like the 4 hour above really help determine where that weekly candle is likely to go to. And there's different time frames that can determine different daily profiles. Like for the weekly profile, for example, the two charts you want to be looking for is the week, just the DOL, and then the 4 hour SysD and PD arrays, because that's going to give you a weekly profile. So understanding, is it going to be classic? Is it going to be consolidation reversal? Is it going to be Wednesday, low high of the week? And then things like the daily profile, we're going to be using the 1 day, the H1, and the 15 to understand daily profile. And there's obviously lower time frame profiles like the M15, M5, and M1 for intersession profiles. So there's different time frames for different specifics, and when you get comfortable, okay, there's not a clear higher time frame draw. Okay, there's not a clear daily profile. I'm likely to see that this lower kind of, because we're working from top down, this lower one is going to be a replica of the higher time frame. Everything is fractal. So if there's not a clear higher time frame draw, there's not going to be a clear lower time frame market maker model, because everything is a market maker model. Moving from PD array to PD array is just another market maker model, right? Like everything in here, market maker model, same thing in here, etc. So looking at the fractalness of it and finding out what works, what doesn't work. Because in reality, like I've said multiple times before, you only need 1 to 2 good setups per week, and you're doing great. So you know that by the economic calendar, you know that by looking at higher time frame, what days you want to be trading. Maybe you just prefer classic expansion on New York, so you have to wait till you see the obvious London manipulation, and then we're going to expand into New York. Most times, the most common profile, if you want to be trading New York, is going to be New York reversal. We normally get at least one of those per week. Classic, we can get most times maximum 1 time per week, maybe 2 if we're lucky. But the New York reversal profile typically is the one that's the most common and easiest one to trade for most people, because 8:30 or 9:30 or 10 will create the low of session, and then we expand into a new time of day, reaching for actual liquidity pools like London or previous day or previous week X. I think that's easier to trade as well. So for the rest of the PM session, obviously I'm not going to be touching it. I suggest that you just tape read it and see how we want to react. We're approaching a higher time frame, all-time highs. If I zoom out here, we're getting close to it. Obviously, look at this huge candle. So tomorrow, I don't know what to expect. We'll just be very careful and keep your expectations low as we get into kind of this uncertain week, finish it off, and then hopefully next week we can be done with all the weirdness. Saturday FX replay session. Yeah, we'll run a backtesting and an FX replay session on Saturday. And then I'm gonna try and either post or I'll record the part 2 of that time video, because I gathered some questions from previous streams that I probably wanted to cover more things on Turtle Soup, more things on identifying weekly profiles and low probability sessions, things like that. So I'll try and post that. And then I think the next video as well will be SMT, how to use SMT, or at least how I use SMT and what to look for to help frame a high probability reversal. So anyways, I don't want to take too much of your time up this afternoon. Go enjoy the rest of the day. Get off the charts if you can. Trading, the goal is to get freedom. So don't feel like you have to just glue yourself to these day in, day out, and that's your whole life. It's not. Just go out, enjoy. This will always be here. You're here to work a couple hours per week and then get out and enjoy the rest of your life. So get that drilled into your mind, and it becomes easier to skip out on days and think it's actually a blessing to take a vacation. So I appreciate you guys. I will talk to you guys, Lord willing, tomorrow morning for a live stream. But till then, journal, do the things that are necessary to succeed, and I'll see you guys soon. Peace.